Danny, happy anniversary to you.
I was going to say, it gets buried in this. We could celebrate tomorrow, but there's so much news today that we don't have a chance to do our normal formalities of you and I coming together, building this show. It's the most significant event in January, on January 6th, in D.C. local history. Don't bother looking that up. It's you and I in one. Nothing else is outside of that, or close to that, rather.
12 years.
12 years, buddy.
Ago today, the world changed, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Not the junkies, but we're chugging along.
No,
okay.
I mean, I was like, yeah, we're getting close. And they're like, we're celebrating 30 this year. I'm like, damn it. We're not close.
I feel good about 12, though.
Yeah.
I will take that. 12 years, a couple of time slots, and a lot of losing football to go.
So much of that.
But let's get to the news of the day. You know, it's funny. Joe Whitt Jr. is getting no run at all. That was a formality.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah.
Technicality. We knew it was coming. He was going to be out. They were going to move on. But it does feel a little bit like, forgive the analogy here, like when two people pass on the same day and one of them's a celebrity or something, and that's who we talk about. It's like there's somebody else here. Two people are out of a job today. One is Joe Whitt, and one is Kliff Kingsbury, and all of the attention, for good reason, understandably, is being paid right now on the offensive side of the ball in Kingsbury. The phrase being used is a mutual parting of ways.
Interesting, isn't it?
When I get fired by this radio station, I want them to call it a mutual parting of ways. Can we do that, please?
I've been dumped, but it was mutual. You know what I mean? Is that what happened?
You ever ended a relationship with a girlfriend and it wasn't your idea, but she was kind enough to let everyone know that you guys amicably, mutually ended the relationship?
Yeah, the public statement was that it was mutual.
He had 1 year left on his deal. I don't think he went to them and said he didn't want to work with Jaden Daniels anymore. But here's kind of how this went down. I was told there was a meeting today to discuss how this season went, first and foremost, and maybe equally or more importantly, the future vision of this offense and the development of Jaden Daniels. And in short order, soonly thereafter, it was announced that they would be moving on without Kliff Kingsbury. There was not enough common ground between Dan Quinn and Kliff. It happened fast. They were set to meet. I'd heard late this morning that they were going to have this meeting and that it could take a while. Like, not only the meeting itself could go a couple of hours,
sure,
but that, yeah, Joe Whitt may come down the pike today. You know, that's pretty quick and easy. But this Kingsbury thing, maybe this lingers. Maybe this is a day or two or three. We'll find out. Hours later, not even, more than 90 minutes, 2 hours, he's out of a job. It becomes official. And I think it was Pelissero broke the news initially, clearly from the agent side on the leak, where he said, Kingsbury sought after, going to get head coaching interviews. We'll have teams lining up to make him their OC. All of that's probably true, but that is the
sure,
phrasing that you get from an agent telling you that a guy is out, not a team. So that's how we got here, Danny. Issues arose as the season progressed. We'll get into what they were, but it became glaringly evident to me yesterday. Alarm bells, beep, 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 flashing lights, alert, alert, alert. When Dan Quinn was asked, days after a report came out, that Adam Peters is at odds with Kliff Kingsbury and that Dan Quinn could go in a different direction at OC next year, for the first time publicly about that report, and just, hey, what did you think of Kliff's performance this year? And he didn't say a single positive thing. He didn't say anything to defend him.
And it would have been very easy to do, by the way.
It was over right then. That was the moment. We said this yesterday in our final segment at 6 o'clock when I knew this was over. And by this morning, after talking to people, it was very obvious they were headed for divorce. And the only question is, was it going to be a firing? Was it going to be a mutual parting of ways? And would it be today or would it be another day? And it was today.
The things that are coming out besides it, and again, this is all sort of, leaked or rumored or reported, et cetera, about the philosophy. So let me give you my silo of my view of it, and then kind of as we go to what's real, maybe what's tangible. And here's what I mean. I'm not going to cry tears for not having Kliff Kingsbury be the OC anymore. I think there, on the whole, it was positive. I think there are certainly weaknesses and things that I grew frustrated by, that continue to be frustrated by, that I've always kind of felt about him in general. The sort of simpletons always go, the Kliff's fake. No, it's not. It's very real. Here's what I mean. He is too slow to make adjustments and changes. That's what sports is. And it's most fundamental. It's two things. One, the imposition of will between two people. Pushing, pulling, hitting, whatever it is. It's two people trying for the same object or the same piece of ground, and you're trying to dominate them physically, mental fortitude, the whole 9 yards. The second layer of what sports is adjusting to the tactics in real time. It's become sort of this ephemeral, mythical thing where people just sort of casually refer to the halftime adjustments of the Gibbs era, or just those sorts of deals. But boil down to its most simple. In sports, if Grant's a Major League Baseball player that's hitting 500 on outside fastballs, I bet he's not seeing an outside fastball for a little bit. He might see a cutter in. How do you adjust to that? How does the pitcher adjust to getting you out? How does the hitter adjust to what the pitchers are doing? And that's sports. That's Major League Baseball. The NFL's the same way. You ran over the league doing X. The people that are paid to stop you figured out how to stop you. What's next? What are you going to do about it? I can't live with my best player last year, for example, Terry McLaurin, just lining up on the left and watching Quinyon Mitchell shove it on him for 4 quarters like in that game we went to in Philadelphia. Where are my stacks? Where are my free releases? Where's my motion? Where's my something to disrupt them? He's too slow to respond to that. So I'm going, he's got some really innovative things. He does a lot of stuff well. Where's the adjustment? When Kevin O'Connell has a formula to disrupt your no-huddle situation, here comes the referee going, on the letter T. And now you're getting delay of games. You can't get plays off in time. They've disrupted your tactic. What's your adjustment to the adjustment? I think he's too slow in that regard. At the end of years, he does overhauls and makes things happen, and good for him, but I think he's too slow in real time. That's my gripe. But again, in general, positive more so than negative.
I think you could say about Kliff that he is largely intractable.
And this is, yeah.
And that there aren't enough adjustments and tweaks to his scheme. He does a thing. He's got to move. It's the dice move. It's Will Ferrell on the floor, but it's kind of what he's got.
Yeah, he's doing a Seth Rogen bit, and that's that.
And 2 things can be true, by the way. Number 1, they were excellent offensively last year. They were elite. He was one of the most important people in the building. I didn't love the hire when they hired him initially. People know that. But I admitted I was wrong. He did a hell of a job with Jaden Daniels.
He was great.
He did an amazing job in his first season. He deserves as much credit as anyone in the building, maybe, other than Daniels last year for getting to the NFC Championship game. I legitimately believe that. I think this year was better than he gets and will now get credit for. To finish 12th in yards per play, that's how you grade out offense at the very basic level of everyone lines up and runs a play. Who gets the most yards on average? Washington was 12th without Jaden Daniels for 3 quarters of the season or whatever it ended up being, with a lot of Marcus Mariota and Josh Johnson. That tells you a lot. The fact that they missed more man games than any other team on offense this year, and they still were not terrible on offense. What normally happens with those injuries, see Detroit's defense by the end of the year, see Washington's defense, you become a shell of yourself. You have no answers. And to his credit, he occasionally had some. But that can be true that last year he gets an A+, that this year he gets let's say a C or a B- or whatever you're going to give him, and his grade for the 2 years is a B. There's nothing fireable about his performance and the results, I'll say. That would be the word. Over 2 years. There's nothing fireable about that. So I put that in the column. But yes, I have major issues with the scheme overall, with the fact that there's one guy who does it like he does it. If it was such a brilliant way to do it, other teams would be doing it more. Nobody else runs no huddle more than 22% of the time. He's doing it almost 80% of the time. That makes it really hard on your defense. I think that is hard to play complementary football. I will never understand why they're not under center more, why there aren't more passes in the middle of the field, pop passes behind linebackers, why they don't marry run game and play action a little bit better. Like, these are things that I don't think are strengths that have led to me butting my head. I'm also not sure that they're why he's gone, for the record. I don't get the sense when I talk to people that they are furious he's not under center or that they don't run more of those traditional Shanahan, Ben Johnson schemes. But I do think there are a couple things at play here. I keep hearing about run-pass balance.
This is where I was going to go, yeah.
Which we'll get into, which Dan Quinn apparently and him butted heads over and were at odds over at different points this year, which I'd love to double-click on. And the other thing I heard was in terms of the vision for Daniel's development moving forward, what does that look like? I think they want a little bit more of a traditional NFL offense. I think they want more of a traditional run game that maybe doesn't involve the quarterback to the extent that we have seen, possibly. But really, I think what they want is something that is less gimmicky. We've seen Cam Taylor-Britt of the Bengals, Marlon Humphrey of the Ravens call this offense out as like being a high school, college offense, whatever, being gimmicky. It's unique. It's one of a kind. It's not like what you see around the league with guys that are getting jobs like Clint Kubiak or Ben Johnson. And I think they want something that resembles that a little more. Less drop-back game out of shotgun, more under-center drop-back passing. But I don't think that was the end-all, be-all. Sounds like, Danny, Kingsbury and Peters butted heads over some things. Quinn and Kingsbury didn't see eye to eye over some things. And if you're Dan Quinn, you're going into a critical third season in what is maybe your last chance as a head coach. You better feel really, really good about who's running that half of the building.
There we go.
He didn't, and he said, if I'm going down swinging with a guy that I like more.
And so as I go through this, just again on a binary, just in this one silo, I'm not again crying over not having Kliff Kingsbury. I probably would have retained him, but again, I'm not sitting there going, they just made the biggest mistake ever. Now, here's the second column. There's a lot to unpack here that you just touched on where I'm a little bit annoyed. I need you to understand who Kliff Kingsbury is before you hire him. You can't complain that the guy that you hired showed up and did the thing that he probably told you he was going to do. It's very easy to find the track record. It's incredibly simple to find his pattern, his behavior, how he operates in a building, who he happens to be. And the idea that he would show up and do those sorts of things needs to not be a surprise, needs to not be up for debate. Like, that's who you hired. That's on you, Dan Quinn and company. That's on you, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters. You guys now are upset that this guy runs the stuff that he runs. Whoops. That's not a Kingsbury thing for me. That's number one. Number two, if you want a better run-pass balance, I suggest you go back to the 1980s. They run it more than they run it more than anybody. This year, they ran it more than they threw it. I know that includes quarterback runs, but that's not where the league is. This is a team that probably runs it, to be honest with you guys, too much when it comes to first downs. I know that every caller to this station, and probably the other one, HD2, is going to go good because they remember a time where they threw the ball 3 times in a row or something. If you just yell, run the ball, okay, I don't have time. I don't have time to address the Chris Russells of the world. I don't have time for people that just count up the number of rush attempts in a given game and decide they need to run it more. If you're Logan Paulson and you can tell me on this play, on this look, an inside zone would have worked because of X, Y, Z. If you tell me on a given snap what the defense was trying to do, what the offense was trying to do, not just for this one play, but for the whole game. Are they setting something up? Are they showing you one look 3 or 4 different times to finally do something different later on? If you're just counting up rush attempts, go, good, I don't want no Kingsbury no more. They need to establish the run. I don't have time. Adults are talking.
Yeah, what is the crux of the run-pass balance issue? That's what I need to drill down on. That's what I'm going to try to get answers on for people, because I can't imagine it's the percentage of the time that they are running not being high enough. On 1st and 10 this year, they ran the ball 59% of the time and threw it 41% of the time, which is, as you said, to the extreme, probably not ideal, honestly, in terms of running it a lot. It's one of the highest rates in the league. I don't like quantity, just total number of anything, because it doesn't take into account how many plays a team runs. So it's a simpleton number. But just as an example, only 3 teams ran the ball on 1st and 10 more often this year than Washington did. Think about that. Only 3. Nobody threw the ball fewer times on 1st and 10 in terms of quantity than Washington did this year. So again, I have a hard time believing Dan Quinn looks at a 60-40 run-pass balance sheet on 1st and 10 and goes, we need to run the ball more than that. It's actually a higher percentage of the time running it on 1st and 10 than they had last year when they were a great elite offense. But they ran the ball 8% more than league average when trailing this year. They ran the ball 10% more than league average when they were tied this year. They ran the ball 3% more than league average when in the lead this year. So this idea of run-pass balance, what does that really mean? Is it the types of runs? Do you want to get to doing things differently schematically? Which brings us to this breaking news, oh, by the way. Apparently, Kliff Kingsbury is not the only member of the offensive staff that Dan Quinn is moving on from. Let's go to Toby Altizer for more.
Nikki Jobvala of The Athletic reporting alongside Diana Rossini that the Commanders have also moved off of their offensive line coach, Bobby Johnson. He joins Kliff Kingsbury on the way out, and also Joe Whitt Jr.
Bobby Johnson, the offensive line coach, out as well. This really surprises me.
I am extremely surprised by that.
Their offensive line had a good season, was well regarded, grades out favorably, and everything I know is that he is very popular in the building. Is he a Kliff guy? Did he take issue with Kliff's dismissal? Did he say, you can't move on from him? We got a good thing going, and they start butting heads? Was their issue with Kliff, when we hear about the run game, was it how they go about it? And because of that, they feel like there's a better fit to implement what's next. Now, hear me when I say, as soon as Kliff was out, there was a really good chance Bobby Johnson eventually wasn't going to be back. And I think that's the case for a lot of these guys on the offensive staff. Like their tight ends coach, who was heavily featured on Hard Knocks, David Rye, who's like really, really popular up-and-coming coach. He'll be gone because he's a Kliff guy. He was with him in Arizona. He'll be wherever Kliff goes. Head coach, OC, doesn't matter. So now you're going to have a different tight end coach. But this is what happens. When you go get a new coordinator, Brian Daboll or Tommy Reese or whoever it is, he'll want to bring in his O-line coach and his tight ends coach. And so you're probably turning over the majority of this staff. Might there be a Tavita Pritchard who hangs around? Yes, that's what happened Rivera into Quinn. By the way, it's fascinating to me that the only coach from the amazing staff that Dan Quinn put together that's already being blown up 2 years later.
Yeah.
One of the big arguments for hiring Dan Quinn was what an amazing staff he would put together. And to his credit, last year they had a hell of a year. The staff got rave reviews. We were singing their praises.
And they go, we can't believe the continuity. I can't believe all these guys are back.
The only guy that's actually gotten a job outside of the building is a guy that was with Rivera beforehand, Tavita Pritchard, who's the new head coach at Stanford.
Who went to Stanford.
But they've now fired their coordinators, and they're moving on from Bobby Johnson. So much for this idea of like this unbelievable staff that Dan Quinn had put together. But the run-pass balance thing is really interesting to me. I think the vision moving forward of what's best for Jaden Daniels is also fascinating. And speaking of Daniels, how about this Jordan Schultz report today? Fox Sports. He says Daniels is frustrated by the decision. I saw use the word blindsided. I don't know how that could be the case because everyone and their brother for 24 hours knew this was coming. And at least one person in Diana Rossini had this report as of Saturday morning that this was coming down the pike. So I don't know how blindsided he was today, maybe this week or something. But this notion that Daniels doesn't like the decision, which I completely believe.
I understand that, yeah.
His relationship with Kliff is very, very close. They're very tight. I've heard from day one that Kliff was immensely involved in the pre-draft infatuation in the building with Jaden Daniels. That this was Kingsbury's guy. He really, really wanted him. And since day one, they have been peas and carrots over there. You have seen, as recently as 2 days ago, the mother of the quarterback, Ms. Jackson, tweeting, and I don't normally get into families and what people are saying, but obviously everyone knows this is a different situation.
Yeah, it's a more public figure.
This is like a public figure who's heavily around, and also, I believe, in some capacity, an agent or a representative of Jaden Daniels. But she tweeted an endorsement of Kliff Kingsbury after it became known publicly that Kingsbury and Peters were at odds. That they're in this stare down, supposedly, according to The Athletic. Then the mom of the quarterback comes out to go, Kliff Kingsbury, Jaden Daniels, presidential ticket, loading for year 3. He's out 48 hours later. Like, that ain't nothing.
No, it's hard not to notice that.
Big deal to me. So between that and then the endorsement yesterday of Daniels saying he wanted Kingsbury back, and now Jordan Schultz coming out leaking this, I don't know who sends it to him, but an agent or somebody in the quarterback's camp. Like, that is something to monitor for sure.
100%. Again, and this is what's normal, by the way. When you have this kind of disastrous season, I hate to say there should be these sorts of things, but this is pretty standard operating procedure that, you can brotherhood preach all you want and get to the press conference and tell everybody how everyone's in it together and have great locker rooms and this, that, and the other. But when it's this bad, heads roll. People lose jobs. People get demoted. People get traded. People get cut. This is par for the course. So this is this ownership group. This is Adam Peters' first go around. We didn't think it would be this soon, but this was always going to happen. This is pro sports, right? Every year there's a disappointing team in that city and their sports radio shows and every article is going to come out, et cetera, about what went wrong and why. You get the cover your ass type deals, which we've had here a billion times over, where it's somebody else's fault. It's it's not the GM's fault. It's the head coach, or it's not the head coach's fault. It's the punter's fault, or it's the this coordinator or that guy. We're going to have to go in a new direction from this scout, et cetera. We've had these a million times over. We know this drill, but we didn't expect to see it with this regime, this ownership, and Adam Peters and company so soon. But here we are. Here's your crossroads, right? Changes are absolutely warranted when you were this bad, when it was this atrocious, and sort of nobody did much. Again, for the balance of the season, when things were still meaningful, the biggest adjustment was made after one of the worst stretches this century, right? It's 2 teams. Washington, I think it was one of the Jacksonville teams in the early aughts, had that bad of a stretch. Joe Whitt changed seats. That's the only – we're fine. We're going to keep sending them up. Even towards the end of the season, it's the same personnel, the same playing time, the same snap counts. Everybody just kind of coming to work like everything's fine. No way. This was always inevitable.
I would not have fired Kliff Kingsbury today. But I don't think moving on from him is indefensible. I totally understand why they would want to have a more traditional-looking NFL offense, but you better have a plan. When we return, I'm going to give you the names I'm hearing linked to Washington. There's a couple of guys that multiple people have told me that they're going to be heavily interested in, so we can get into those names in just a few minutes. I also think we should go back to something that you referenced, Danny, which is the complaints that they supposedly have, or the issues where they are at odds with Kliff, are over very Kingsbury-centric themes. You hired this guy.
You hired the guy.
You want a traditional run game. Why was he your choice? You want a quarterback operating in a more NFL-friendly offense. That's NFL normal. Why did you go get Kliff Kingsbury and pry him away from the Raiders where he had a deal in place, basically? Yeah. You hired Kliff, and you're frustrated that Kliff showed up. It is very, very strange to me, just 2 years after you brought him in, that a lot of the things that make his offense unique and different are some of the things maybe that they've grown tired of, unless they thought he would be less, maybe more malleable, less rigid, and that they could add and subtract the things that they liked with new wrinkles.